Let me just start off by welcoming you all, ladies and gentlemen, to our Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport UAE branch event. And I want to thank you all for making time and finding time to attend this event. One of the many events that we have actually lined up for the coming periods. Yes, the business environment today for supply chains is prone to some challenges, and we have found it, prudent that we can come up with a topic that's kind of interesting, a roadmap for digital transformation of supply chains. We've got some speakers that are renowned industry experts in their own respect. They're also part and parcel of the CILT UAE board. And I'm going to introduce the first speaker who is going to speak to us, our own Miss Nadia, who is going to talk about the state of affairs within the UAE. So over to you, Miss Nadia.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can see my screen. Yes? Okay.
Yes,
first and foremost, thank you for being here with us today. Of course, CILT UAE is revamping itself again in the United Arab Emirates, along with the Women in Logistics division of that. And we welcome you to this virtual event. I will be basically covering some information about what's happening with the government strategy, UAE digital strategy, in relation to the supply chain and logistics sector, and just give you a broad overview of that. And then we will be followed by a presentation also from Mr. Ahmed Ghannou, who is also a CILT UAE board member and representing Meirc Training Center. Okay, we'll start off by the UAE digital strategy. Now, the UAE has a digital strategy of 2025, and this digital strategy is focusing on making sure that most of the government activities are digitalized. This strategy is not the first strategy that we had. It started off in 2003, and everything was set to be online. Right now, everything is online and also on your smartphones, specifically when we talk about supply chain logistics, and predominantly when we speak about Dubai as a logistic hub and Abu Dhabi, and followed by the other Emirates. But in terms of the digital UAE strategy, they look at 8 different dimensions. One of them is leaving no one behind. Everybody will be part of this. Everybody can use it. The digital strategy has to be resilient, strong, secure, fit for the digital age, in line with what's happening around the world, user-driven, very user-friendly. The service has to be very highly appreciated by the users instead of by the people who made it. So more customer satisfaction, hopefully, and digital by design. So design-wise also, it has to be very high-tech, high-end. Data-driven, so there will be data that can be used to forecast and support the services. Open by default, open for everybody to use government services data easily. And proactiveness, proactive meaning responding to customer needs and services, and not being very hectic and difficult to use, very easy to use. As we mentioned, 2025, there are a lot of milestones to be taken into account, but there are KPIs driven by the government and will be continuously measured to make sure that we reach there. When we talk about supply chain, we do have single windows developed by Dubai and Abu Dhabi for the imports, exports, customs, etc. Transporters, Dubai Trade single window, Maqta Gateway for Abu Dhabi. And as part of the government strategy, they want to be the best place to live in, work in, or travel to. How that is going to be achieved, part of this strategy will include offering better services, augmented services for the customers to experience and people living here. And this will not be achieved without the use of technology and digitalization. As you know, there are also a lot of strategies within various sectors for the government in a very holistic way. They've got the government initiatives, blockchain strategy, cybersecurity strategy, data strategy, e-commerce, Internet of Things, and national cybersecurity and Smart Dubai 2021 and beyond. So these are some of the things that the government is focusing on. As we can see, supply chain, they've already used it for the air cargo ports, smart ports, automated ports by DP World, Khalifa Port. Business needs, everything is digitalized. You can renew your licenses, visas, driving licenses, trade licenses online using digital platforms, PRO, marketing, e-commerce, last mile delivery using Smart Dubai services or other e-digital services and applications. And it's also in the service sectors by the governments, trade sectors, capacity building, training, etc. As we've seen what has been done by the schools. We are one of the most globalized countries. Here we are in the Middle East. We rank #1 globally. We're 4th best place to do business in the Arab world and 16th globally. I've just put a few of the listings from international ranking organizations. So best city for expats to live in, 3rd best city, Global Power City Index. And in terms of innovation, we are #1 in the Arab world, which means you are in the right place when you are thinking of anything related to digital technology, etc. When we move on to the next slide, we look at the year 2021 is the 50th year of the UAE. So there are various projects, 50 projects, and these are 10 by 10 programs, increasing in exports of the country to 10 different key markets. This will take place, but a lot of forecasting and digital applications will be used to connect people from one country to the other. Modernization of the visa and permits, all are going to be online using digital initiatives. 24 billion dirhams have been spent for the next 5 years to employ an additional, which means more capacity building and training using also the digital platform, 75,000 Emiratis into the workforce. The UAE Railway, as well as the new technology Hyperloop program, will be in place using latest technology. And as we know, there will be a lot of free trade agreements, CEPA agreements, and authorized economic operator agreements between customs to support businesses, which are all also having a lot of digital dimension to that. They are bringing in more than 100 coders a day, which means 3,000 programmers in a month. And this tells you the importance of programming and technology and going forward using full-blown digital technology for the country. New initiatives, as we know, the retirement visa, 10-year visa, entrepreneur visa, and people into technology are having a lot of incentives by the government. And the new weekend and the new launch of the virtual program, working program, using also technology and digitalization, along with the bankruptcy new law to support the businesses. As we know, just as an example, when we're thinking technology, the UAE, we want to be the leaders when it comes to technology, smart services. You can see even one of the examples I'm going to give you is the Dubai Chamber. It is divided itself into 3 different segments right now and divisions to further enhance the services given to the members, the international investors too. So you're going to have the Dubai Chamber, the Dubai Chamber Higher Board. Then it is into 3 different categories. Dubai Chamber of Commerce, focusing on trade, Dubai International Chamber, focusing on international trade, Dubai Chamber of Digital Economy, everything related to digital economy, trade, etc. So there is a huge focus on digitalization by the government. This tells us that even as private sector, we need to be in sync with the government initiatives to be in line with what's happening and to exceed customer expectations, not only when it comes to working with the government, but in the private sector too. Some of the things that we've got exposed to because of COVID are sudden plant restrictions, disruptions, opening, closing, resulted in improving cargo capacity using digital platforms and applications. Even the border restrictions, there has been applications to check on border openings, restrictions, traffic jams, etc. A lot of use of technology. Same thing, now we have the herd immunity, everybody is vaccinated. However, we continue to have supply demand shocks even after the 2 years of the pandemic because of the political instability in certain regions, disrupting also the supply chain routes, which means we need to use multimodal ways of doing business, transporting goods. As we can see, huge impact on e-commerce, bigger air travel right now, which means more online bookings, and there is more supply than demand. And this is why we see higher price fluctuations for transport as well as passenger transport. These are the areas that were impacted. We're not going to go through this. And this is a chart to show the growth after the pandemic. Same thing goes when there are disruptions, what's happening around the world where we source goods from China or Russia, Ukraine, when it comes to food security. A lot of rerouting has been done, looking for new sources of food supplies, goods from other countries besides the main market players is one of the actually issues that we face. But using technology and using connectivity, people are looking through different sources. The supply chain logistics has been impacted. If we look at the road, sea, air, multimodal, of course, the digitalization has been used to look at visibility of the cargo when it comes to customer use. Of course, processes will be changed and then the business model will be changed, but a lot of digitalization when it comes to smarter port operations, cargo community, cargo market online, focus on integration and collecting the cargo and consolidations, all using technology, clearance, collaboration between land transporters, airlines, all with the use of digital technology. And before we use the technology for just in time, and now we use it just in case there is a pandemic, or just in case there is a war. What do we have in place? Do we have any buffer service? We need to be resilient. We need to have inventory. We need to have technology used to forecast and to have better ecosystems and partnerships with different countries. Nearshoring, getting all of our requirements nearby, getting materials from different suppliers, different countries, closer to the mainland. Growth opportunities with all of these supply chain disruptions. The UAE has worked on having a disaster department which deals with any of these issues that take place. For example, we managed to be the logistic hub for the world when it comes to COVID vaccines or humanitarian aid, and all of these issues have created opportunities in supply chain, using the UAE as a global hub for transshipments, humanitarian aid, food security, etc. Air bridges between us and different countries to support them in war or when there are pandemics or natural disasters. Right now, a lot of project cargo is taking place, air chartering, ship chartering, and we have the best connectivity within the region. So you will see a lot of growth and support from the government towards that. E-commerce, last mile delivery are some of the opportunity areas, and social marketing and digital payment portal, digital virtual stores and businesses being used more. More of augmented and virtual reality, whether it is customer experience, capacity building, training, or shopping. All of these are the way forward and the future. So we are going to see a lot of automation, a lot of digital use in different sectors of what we do. Trade corridors, different trade corridors being open, production relocation, because also of the wars and instabilities, we may have things moving in. But all of this connectivity and networking will take place on the digital platform. The use of blockchain, digital media, metaverse is also being used by some of the government ports. For example, DP World is using the metaverse now as part of their digital platform to serve their clients. And some of these areas that we see cross-border supply chain work and shift in delivery models will all be based on digital platforms and technology, all to support the customers, built for the customer needs. As mentioned, food logistics, farmer logistics is going to be on the growth, securing food for countries, fuel, all of this is going to impact us, higher prices. Governments are working on securing all of that to make sure that everything is stable where we are, and we can focus on enhancing customer experience and investor experience in the UAE. So digital economy is going to be the way forward, more specifically for this region and the UAE in various areas. As I mentioned, supply chain logistics is the backbone of the trade in the UAE. We get our GDP, 30% of the GDP comes from trade, 14% comes from supply chain logistics, and soft part of that and the hard part of that has been taken care of by making sure that we have the software in place, the digital technology in place, the security, confidentiality of information in place, whether it's the roads, the tolls, the highways, the rail in place, sea freight, the ports, they all use latest technology. Air freight, of course, we have the system called Kalogi. Everything is using digital technology. And also we have got also the virtual corridor between the Al Maktoum Airport and Dubai International Airport, which is the first virtual cargo corridor between two airports in the world. So we are using technology in every aspect that you can think of, but it will be more in the future. The key is to have the public and private sector to work hand in hand to make sure this reaches its full potential. Right now, there is huge focus on government services. The private sector will have to follow. And this is the same thing as I mentioned, digitalization will impact warehousing, automation, marketplace for the freight forwarders, and last mile delivery automation for the courier and contract logistics. And we need to be part of this because in every aspect, you will see the government is focusing on 3D printing, augmented reality, Internet of Things, blockchain, cybersecurity, metaverse, Internet of Things, etc., and creating a digital economy for the future. If we, as the private sector, do not follow, we will miss a big part and a big opportunity in the supply chain as well as the trade sector, which is my advice to go forward, is to look at good digital platforms that enhance your business for the future. Thank you so much, and I hand the presentation to our next speaker, Mr. Ahmed Ghanoum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nadia, for setting the stage here for the next speaker, who is going to now give us some solution regarding the responses to the business environment, as you just alluded to. So many things that we have presented. So without further ado, I want to hand over to Ahmed. Over to you now.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Nadia, for that very interesting talk. So once again, allow me to welcome everyone to this webinar. So my name is Ahmed Ghanoum. I'm a partner at Meirc Training and Consulting. So I'm going to be presenting really a roadmap for the digital transformation of supply chains. But before we get to the actual roadmap, let's take a look at where we are today, okay? At the moment, you know, starting back from the onset of the COVID outbreak and towards the end of 2019, we actually felt, the real impact during the first quarter of 2020. A lot of people don't realize that COVID brought about 2 shocks to the supply chain system, not just 1 shock. And now I've spoken in other webinars about the bullwhip effect, how one interruption somewhere along the chain is going to impact everyone all the way back to the earth, be it to the farmers or the mines or the fishermen. But really, let's not forget the world shut down overnight, okay, in 2020. So that was a shock, a downward shock. But then 3 or 4 months later, it recovered very, very quickly, faster than anyone actually anticipated. And that was another shock to the supply chains. And people don't really talk about discuss that one. But that was a positive shock. But still, it had a major impact on sourcing containers, sourcing trucks, logistics, etc. And then since we've had several related and unrelated shocks, labor shortages, which impacted truck drivers in the UK, in the US. Don't forget the blockage of the Suez Canal by the MV Ever Given. Yes. And, then we had another COVID outbreak in Shenzhen, which led to closing down all, one of the busiest ports in the world, I think the 2nd or 3rd busiest port in the world. And then all the way up to, the latest crisis we have, which is impacting food security, other, minerals, which is basically the Ukraine crisis. So this is where we are today, okay? And that has led to, a huge hyperinflation, okay? And really stagflation. So the economies in different parts of the world is stagnating, and coupled with the hyperinflation, it only takes 1 trip to your gas station, okay, to see how quickly prices are rising across the world. And all of that is impacting or exacerbating the supply chain problem. Now, if you're a company, okay, and obviously you run a supply chain because everyone provides either a good or a service, where do you go from here? Okay, so there's no containers, prices are through the roof, there's a fight over raw materials, basic stuff, as simple as wheat, we can't get wheat anymore, okay, in a lot of these, a lot of economies around the world. What do you do, okay? Now, everyone's talking about the transformation, okay, or digital transformation of supply chains. But transformation is about really striving. So transformation is not something you do to survive, okay? So if you want to balance survival, which is basically the short-term thing, with transformation, which is a luxurious long-term thing, how am I going to worry about transformation when I can't even get simple goods to my customers? Okay, now just to put things in context, when I talk about survival, I'm talking about short-term focus, okay, and when I talk about thriving, I'm talking long-term focus. We talk about survival, we're talking about resilience. Resilience here in the supply chain context is, am I able to get my goods where they need to be at the right time, at the right place, at the right price? And if I do that, how do I do that profitably? Because prices are going up every single day, okay, right now, literally every single day. And what happens is companies start worrying about losing customers. So what they have to do is they have to kind of bring down their cost structure. By bringing down the cost structure, quality is impacted and they lose customers. And every time they lose more and more customers, they have to realign their supply chain for efficiencies. And you end up with a vicious circle. So basically, you have to decrease your prices, you lose quality, you lose customers, and that ends up leading you to reduce the prices once again. So a lot of companies are in a real fight for survival, and they say, okay, and you want me to transform. So how am I going to transform? What kind of state of mind do I have to be in to transform when I can barely do my day-to-day jobs? Again, when you're in survival mode, you're thinking of supply chain as an enabler, which is the old view of supply chain. Today, companies, the ones that are doing, the most successful companies, you just have to look at Amazon. They have supply chain as an actual core strength. It's what differentiates them from the other companies. So the question is, okay, that we all have to think about is, which is the right way forward today, in today's environment with all the disruption or the hyperinflation and all these issues? Do I focus on survival Or do I bring in millions and millions of dollars and invest in transformation, and there's no knowing where that's going to lead me? And of course, the answer is not so straightforward. Okay, it's not so simple. In truth, what you need to do is, it's going to depend. Okay, it depends on which industry you're in. Some industries do better than others. Some industries are transforming at a slower pace than others. But also within your industries, it depends on the company's model, and within a company, it depends on your segments. So you might have, 3 verticals at your company, and one vertical might be focused on survival, while you might need to promote this another vertical through more investments in digital technology. Now I'm not going to talk about the survival, if you want, the playbook, okay, because I've talked about that in a couple of other webinars. But basically, if you're in the survival business, okay, you're focusing on building resilience, getting your goods where they need to be at the lowest cost within the required customer service requirements. Here, you have 4 sets of strategies that you can look at. Building redundancies, which is basically having extra capacity, be it stock or manpower or warehouses. It could be focusing on flexibility, which comes at the price as well, through standardizing your processes, designing for postponement, etc. Again, I'm going over these quickly because our focus today is not survival, but rather it's transformation. Robustness, okay, so working on your systems, investing in the invisibility, which is basically investing in the ability to generate data and to analyze the data and to make sense of that data so that you can pick up problems early on before they actually spread. And finally, working on your name, okay, the goodwill, which is basically marketing your brand name, cultivating business partnerships, driving innovation. All of that builds your brand. And the reason we say that's important is because when things go down, if you have a good reputation, your partners will help you out, be it the banks or the suppliers or your customers. But if we don't have equitable brand recognition in the market, then once we fall, it becomes very, very difficult to get back up on our feet. So again, very quickly, this is the survival playbook. But now let's move towards the transformation roadmap, okay, which is basically the topic of today's webinar. What are the steps that we need to do to transform or to digitally transform, mind you, our supply chains? And I'm going to cover this in 7 different steps, starting with, like any initiative in any company anywhere, with securing senior management's buy-in. Now, the reason we talk about buy-in here is because if you don't have the full dedication, the full commitment, okay, one-way stubborn focus on digital transformation from the top person at the company, then guess what? It's not going to happen. So you need to have that sponsorship, and then that oozes down into the C-suite and beyond that. And of course, you need to advertise, what we call the burning platform. The burning platform, which is the, there's an anecdote. If you have someone standing here on the platform, okay, and you want that person to get out of their comfort zone, you tell them to jump in the water, and there's a huge, maybe a 90% risk of death jumping into the water. How do you get that person to jump? Well, you set the platform on fire, and once the platform is on fire, if you don't jump, you have a 100% chance of death. So which is better, 90% or 100% in this case? No, I'll take my chances, even though it's only 10% chance survival. So in a business context, the senior leadership have to build that communications plan, get the message clear. Why are we doing this? They need to link it to the mission of the company. They need to link it to the values of the company. And then the message is going to be, guys, if we don't embark on this journey, because transformation is a journey, it's not something you do today and then it's over, at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. If we don't embark on that journey, then we are all going down with the ship. So that needs to be loud and clear. Some of the best CEOs, the most successful companies, they might not have a burning platform per se, but they create that sense. Okay, so they exaggerate an existing problem just to get people motivated to move in a certain direction, because otherwise everyone wants to stay in their comfort zone. So securing buy-in, in my opinion, is the first and most important step in any transformation initiative. And then after you do that, that's when you start looking at setting specific goals, especially in supply chain. You don't just want to say, well, let's transform. there has to be specific objectives to our transformation, okay? So we start, of course, by, before we set those objectives, we look at where we are today. So analyze the current state of our supply chain operation. It's like when you go, when you order an Uber, before you tell the Uber where you want to go, you have to tell them where you are, okay? So that you know how to get there. So basically start with where you are, and this involves a lot of data gathering, data analysis, and then you define where you want to be, your point B. And your point B needs to be super ambitious, okay? There's no half measures here when you're talking digital transformation. The third step, so now I know where I want to be, is how do I get there? And this needs to be broken down here, and this is a key point. This needs to be broken down into manageable parts. I don't want to, you know, take on too much at the same time. It's like that, again, classic question. How do you eat an elephant? You cannot just swallow an elephant. It has to be, you know, I mean, we love elephants, but that's just the anecdote. It has to be cut down into smaller pieces before you can actually manage that. And then you have to be religiously data driven. So what you're going to do is you're going to start by saying, okay, what's my first purpose here? What's my first goal? Is it to improve customer service? Is it to improve the productivity of my dispatching team? Is it to improve fulfillment time, picking accuracy? You set your target, okay, for that. And then it's very important to keep collecting data so that I have an indicator of where I am, which will tell me if I'm on the right track or not. Am I getting closer to my point B or not? So once you have both the buy-in and the goals, you also need to work on the culture. Now, culture is, again, it's everything. Either you have the digital culture or you don't. There's no half measures here. And cultures are usually driven by our values, organizational values. Now, I'm highlighting here five of the most important values that you ideally want to have as a company that's embarking on a supply chain transformation journey. The first thing, again, is to be customer-centric. So the customer always comes first. And in today's world, in today's digital age, what the customer wants today, okay, or this morning might not be what they want this afternoon. So this is a continuous, we're continuously playing catch up. We want to be proactive, but again, it's not a journey. This is not a journey where you're going to say, I arrived at my destination and that's it. No, there's always more work to do, but we put the focus on the customer and not on things like your processes. We're not focusing on, you know, my factory. I'm not focusing on my distribution fleet. No, it's on the customer, and then everything is driven from there. Agility is very important. Things need to be fast. Things need to happen ASAP. And the point with agility is I need to get value to the customer at the fastest speed, even if it's not perfect, but I need to get it to the customer. It needs to be in their face ASAP. Again, it's a collaborative effort, like everything supply chains. Okay, a supply chain by definition means you have partners. Okay, whether it's on the supply side or the demand side. Needs to be a collaborative effort, because this is, again, transformation is a cross-functional thing. So you cannot just transform your supply chain. It has to be done, the supply chain, it has to be done, you know, touching base with the customer service department. It has to touch with the sales team. You need to look at within supply chain. If you change your warehousing system, you need to make sure that the transportation system adjusts as well, because these are always talking to each other as systems. So you cannot work in silos. You have to work cross-functionally. Of course, you need empowerment. So the decision making needs to happen closest to the action. Okay, if the decision needs to be taken at the warehouse, the person at the warehouse needs to take that decision. It should not be escalated all the way to your chief digital transformation officer, or to the CEO, or to the head of the department. Even if the decision is taken, you know, at the call center, the person answering the phone, that's where it's gonna happen. And also, we need to be prepared to fail, and we need to be prepared to fail fast. Okay, failing fast meaning, if I invest, you know, in new technology and I find it's not working, I don't want to drag on and on and on. Okay, like a bad relationship. You need to have the willpower to set your losses ASAP when you feel that a certain investment is not going in the right direction. Failure should not be penalized as well. Risk-taking should be rewarded in such an environment. Now we get to the actual management of the initiative, and it's again very important to centralize command over here. So a lot of companies nowadays, the most successful ones, they all have a chief digital officer, and the chief digital officer is probably the number 2 guy in the company. So in the past, we used to talk about CEO number 1, CFO number 2. Nowadays, it's CEO number 1 and CDO, the chief digital officer number 2. Now, why do you have that position? Because you want to avoid a scenario where different departments are investing in different systems that don't talk to each other, or where there is actually a lot of overlap. You need to have good oversight over every single investment so that your warehouse management system talks to your artificial intelligence system, and that talks to your data aggregating system. Everything needs to be centralized seamlessly, working together. And again, it's very important to have a very high caliber CDO, because what tends to happen is that the CDO comes in and they tend to bring about the talent that supports them. So it's kind of like a football team. Okay, if you have a recognized world-class manager, that manager is able to bring in top players that an average manager might not be able to bring in. So here, this is something that's taken very serious, again, if you are embarking on digital transformation journey. And then that's when you start launching your investments. Now, obviously, you need to have an overview, okay, like a master plan, but that master plan, again, it has to be revisited periodically. It's kind of like, you implement, you check, and then you adjust, implement, check, adjust. You keep revisiting that. Secure the funding, and then very important is to choreograph the rollout of your technologies. Now, when I say choreograph, let's say you have 10 or 12 or 15 different investment initiatives to support your digitization. Which one goes first? I don't want to do everything at the same time. Which one goes first? Which one goes second? Which one goes third? Typically, you want to start with a project, okay, that is high visibility, meaning everyone can see it, because you remember you're gonna have a lot of resistance. So you need somewhere. So we call these lighthouse projects. Okay, it's a lighthouse. It's like a pilot project that it's very high up. Everyone can see it. Everyone can see the light. And if it succeeds, that success is gonna rub on. Everyone wants to be part of the that initiative. Now, you don't want to go for the most expensive technology or the most complex technology, nor do you want to go to the cheapest or the least complex. What you want is something that has relatively large benefits, but with limited risks as well. So don't take up a high risk initiative initially, because if your first project is high risk and it fails, that's going to set the tone for everything else. It's going to bring down morale, and people are going to hesitate about whether we're in the doing the right thing or not. Rather, limit your risks in the first lighthouse project, so that if you succeed, you can build on that success. You can advertise that success. You can get people to stand on the shoulders of those successes and push yourselves forward. One last thing, when you choose your early initiatives, again, you want initiatives that are going to bring in money, okay, cash, especially in today's market with the cash crunch, with the hyperinflation. You don't want to be just spending. You want early initiatives that can either generate large amounts of savings or that can help you capture broader market share. Now, as you roll out your initiatives, again, you want to be as agile as possible. Now, if you look at these images I have here on the right, the top set of images of the Mona Lisa is what we call an agile approach. And that contrasts with the bottom approach, which is what we call a waterfall approach. Now, the key difference in both these, you're drawing your painting. In the agile approach, I can immediately, as a customer, okay, I want value. I'm getting value very early on in the game. Now, I'm not getting maximum value. I cannot see the full Mona Lisa in color, but at least I can make out her, the way she looks. Okay, I can already see what this picture is looking like. And that's okay if you, not just okay, that's exactly what we want. You don't want to invest millions of dollars to perfect a product before you go to market, because if you do that, which is the waterfall approach, If I'm taking my time and the customer only receives value, after 16 or 18 months have passed, and they don't like that value, that means I've spent all that money, I've spent all that effort for nothing. Using this approach, I can get early sensors, okay, using the Agile approach. I know if people are gonna like it already or not. And if I feel like it's gonna fail, I can fail fast. I can fail over here before I invest fully in that painting. So this is how we should approach any technology endeavor, okay? Whether it's implementing a new system, okay, just get on with it, and then you do the fine tunings along the way. If you're rolling out a new distribution network to a new area, don't wait till you have the perfect routes. Just get your trucks on the road, and then you fine tune as you go along. So it's basically operate, check what you're doing, and then make the adjustments, and you keep going around in circles. What we call feedback loops, basically. Okay, and the key is to consistently revisit. So after every step, I'm revisiting where I am and how I'm doing. Now, once you're there, okay, you have the approach, you have the culture, you've made your first lighthouse project, you've succeeded. That might take 1 or 2 years. Once you get to that stage, you're gonna have to scale up, okay? And when we talk about scaling up here, okay, what we're talking about is basically, sorry, I think I lost my last slide here. When you talk about scaling up, we're talking about accelerating your investments. We call it digital acceleration. So I was going on 2nd gear, okay, driving my car at 60 kilometers per hour. I was doing well, but then I got all that confidence. I'm ready to go to 3rd, 4th, and 5th gear overnight, okay? And then that's basically what's going to help you transform the business. At the end of the roadmap, okay, once you've done all of those chunks of investments and you've succeeded, what you'll do is you're going to come back to your supply chain, okay, and you're going to say, okay, let me reassess this whole business model. Do I have it right, or is my existing model expired, and is it time to migrate to something different? So that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. Again, I think Ben mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to jot them down in the chat, and one of our panel members would be happy to pick them up.
Oh, thank you so very much, Ahmed. Thank you so very much for that enlightening presentation here. And I like the analogy that you've just given us here, where you're looking at the 2 scenarios. That's the survival mode versus the thriving mode. You've given us your roadmap to coming up with a sustainable sort of transformation using digitalization here. And yeah, I like them in a way. I've got a few questions, but let's just open up to the people that are around here. If they have some questions that they want to pose, either to Ms. Nadia's presentation, where she set up the scene within the UAE, and what are some of the opportunities that are available. Any particular questions that you've got, we can ask our presenters. I'm going to start with the question, like, yes. Yeah, for you, Mr. Ahmed. Is there any particular risk that you would consider within the 7 steps here that me as a supply chain manager should really look at to avoid failure in the implementation of this roadmap?
Thank you for that question, Ben. Look, today it's a minefield out there. You cannot take one step without, you solve one risk and you're untangling 10 other risks. Like I said, the key thing here is to have it in your DNA as a company to transform. And the way you do that is you need the senior commitment, and you need from the senior team, they need to embed a culture for transformation. Someone was mentioning the other day that, when they got their first Nokia phone, they were so happy, they said, I'm going to keep it forever. And then the BlackBerry came out. And then they said, oh, this is now a much better phone. I'm going to keep this one forever. And then after that, the Apple phone came out. And now everyone's saying, I love my iPhone. I love my iPhone. If a company like, any company in the world, in this example, Apple, if they don't keep innovating, if they don't keep digitizing, if they don't keep investing in new technologies, guess what? They're not going to be here tomorrow. And that's a fact of life. So risks, yes, but by the bucket.
Thank you. Any other question from the members here present?
Can we?
Yes, somebody wants to say, is that you, Nadia?
No, that's just me, I think. I don't know if anybody has questions or not.
Okay.
But I think we should engage our guests, hopefully, after the summer with CILT UAE and the new events that will be taking place and trainings with CILT UAE that might be of use to the delegates who have signed in.
Okay, we will do that. Yeah, thank you, Nadia. Any question? Somebody just got that. Okay. Right.
There are some questions on the chat, I think.
Yeah, there's a few now that are there. Okay, let's start with the first one here. How do you overcome resistance to change? Okay, yes. How are we going to overcome resistance to change? Assuming we're using this roadmap to sort of address the issues that you just raised. And then the second one is, what are the different challenges? Okay, what different challenges are there working within multicultural team? Yes.
That's a very good, that's an excellent question. Okay. How do you overcome resistance to change? When you plan any change initiative, it's very important to have a well thought out communications plan. Now, the communications plan will have a main message, which is what are we here to do, how we're going to achieve it, et cetera, et cetera. But then you need to identify who the different parties are, and you need to identify, not everyone's relevant. Everyone might be relevant, but some are more relevant than others. You need to identify the people who have a lot of power, a lot of influence, and are at the same time against my, or they're resistant, okay, against my initiative. And you need to, for each of these people or entities, you need to identify what their interest is, okay? Are they interested in better quality? Are they interested in keeping their job? Are they interested in, having a bigger team, a bigger office, savings? Everyone has an interest. And if you can identify that interest and talk to that interest, that's how you get people on your side. We all have interests, and at the same time, we all have insecurities. So similarly, you need to look at their insecurities and you need to kind of calm them down. Don't worry, you're gonna have your job, you're gonna, you'll always have your big office, etc. But really, it's all about, managing the emotional element of change. Some people are more, logic oriented. That's the easiest person to convince because you just show them the numbers. Okay, I think you had the second question.
And I think, yes, Dr. Ahmed, I think Ahmed also capacity building, the fact that we resist this new technologies because we don't know how to use it, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, how to maybe make use of the data, forecast, and the cost involved also. If the cost factor is not so high, the risk is minimized on a pilot scale or trial basis, then people might give these new applications, digital applications, a chance to be cascaded into the company.
Yes, true. Okay, and there's another question about the different challenges within a working environment that is multicultural. Any comments, probably Ms. Nadia?
Well, working with multicultural, if you know we work with a lot of predominant nationalities in the UAE. I know we have a lot of nationalities, but predominantly there are 3-4 nationalities that you might be working with on a daily basis. So if you know their culture, the insecurities, a lot of the time some people might be scared that they might lose their job if somebody new gets into the company. That is a type of insecurity, depending on the background and the educational background, etc. But if we can overcome this, we will be able to work more closely with different nationalities to actually show them that you're not a threat. In fact, you will add value to the team, to the bottom line, where everybody grows with the company. Maybe that can reduce some of the cultural differences between people. And maybe from top to down, teamwork and team bonus or incentives, I would say, as a team, as a project, not only individual incentives.
Thank you very much. Any other comment or questions from the participants here? Okay.
Yes, Dr. Ben. This is Daniel.
Right. Oh, Daniel. Okay, sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, Karen.
No, I was trying to look for how to put up my hand and I wasn't seeing it, so I just decided to go this way.
Go for it.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ahmed, for the wonderful presentation. It has left me with almost nothing to ask, but just something that I'm wondering. I run a small business, and a few days back I decided we created a group, a WhatsApp group, and we are adding so many people. So WhatsApp increased the number from 256 to 500 people allowance in a group. And so yes, so the content, the pictures, because we are using it for trading, the pictures were overwhelming. So we started on encouraging the suppliers there to do catalog, which I would think would also maybe fall within the same scope of what we are discussing today. But I just wanted to understand how maybe handling unlearning and then training or learning could be done in such kind of situations.
So just to get the question again, what's the, I heard what you said, but could you just repeat the question part, please?
Yes, digitization, I would say is an improvement or an enhancement of a process or of how we do things.
Yeah.
Now we have for us to reach there needs to be learning of something new. But now to learn something new, we must unlearn. So I just need to understand how what strategy you could think of and yes, of learning something new or teaching something new or training something new to people.
Yeah. Okay. Another excellent question. So I mean, we're in the learning business as well. When we talk about learning anything, there's no need to really unlearn. It's just adding another layer of knowledge, because even the old knowledge, there's jewels of wisdom in that. But usually we break down learning or building competencies into three parts. Okay, there's the actual knowledge, and the knowledge is what you acquire. You know, you can acquire the knowledge reading a book, reading an article, attending a webinar, attending a course, etc. And then you got to put that knowledge into practice, which is skill building. Okay. It's like if you want to learn tennis, okay, I can read a book about tennis, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna win Wimbledon, next year. You still need to get a racket and the ball, and you have to bounce it against the wall at first, and you're gonna have to practice and practice to up your skill.
Yes.
And the third thing, which is often left out, but equally important, is the attitude. Do those people want to learn or not? And that's not something you can really. I mean, that's something that's inherent. You cannot teach that. Yeah, you cannot really teach that.
I think my question lies in the last one, the attitude. I think that's where it would fall.
Yeah, and that's why we say you have to invest in quality people. Okay, when I said hire a chief digital officer, don't save money on that, because if you have one bad apple, that's gonna ruin the whole crate.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have time for one last question, but otherwise, thank you everyone for joining once again. Ben, you want to wrap it up? We have one more minute.
Yes. Thank you very much all for your participation in this event. I just want to say that we've got a committee here represented by, I'm the chairperson for CILT UAE, and I've got the other colleagues here that have just presented. Miss Nadia, she's actually looking after the women in logistics, or WILLAT. And then Dr. Sharon is also here, who is looking after the young professionals and new generation. And Mr. Ahmed is also a board member. So we actually creating some events for you and for the organization for your benefit. And this is one of them that we've just had. And we're going to be working tirelessly with our training providers to ensure that the education and training portfolio is also supported. And we, as your institute, are going to run more of these trainings and education platforms to benefit you. We look forward to be with you again in the future. I can see our time is running out. So thank you all for coming. And thank you very much, Ahmed and Miss Nadia, for the presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nadia.
Ben
Thank you,
Ahmed.
Ben.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Meirc.com